Becky, how'd you get here?
I don't know. I don't know. I failed PE when I was 15, and I'm pretty sure you passed by just showing up. And I showed up. I would just stand there with my stick in my hand, my hockey stick, and so I had a little talk with myself, and I was like, oh, Rebecca, you need to get your life together. You can't keep going down this road. Lord knows where you're going to be. And I was a huge wrestling fan. So I found out that they were opening a wrestling school about an hour and a half away from me. So I was like, oh, this is it. This is it. All the girls in wrestling, they're in great shape, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to be a wrestler because that's a ridiculous dream. And I just failed PE. So I went along, and I was the only girl, and I show up at this place, and I'm expecting a bunch of muscle-bound lads and a bunch of muscle-bound women and a wrestling ring, of course, as one would expect in a wrestling school. And I show up, and it's nothing but a bunch of skinny teenagers and 6 blue padded mats on the ground. And that was wrestling. And I started off there, and I was awful. Like yourself, I was uncoordinated, didn't have a clue what I was doing, but I loved it. Like, I loved it. It was for the first time in my life, I was like, oh, I want to be good at something. I want to get better at something. And that was it. I studied as much as I could about it. I went over to England and slept on mats and in wrestling rings whenever I could during summers and any vacation I had away from school. And then at 17, I dropped out of college. I moved off to Canada, and I started wrestling around Canada, around America. I went over to Japan. I was the youngest foreign female to main event in Japan, and things were really taking off. I was really making a name for myself at only 18, 19. And then my visa ran out in Canada, and I had to go home and live with my ma. And I don't know if anybody here is from Ireland, but Irish mammies are a different level. And so my mom was like, well, what's your plan? What's your plan? What's your plan? What's your plan? And with stuff like wrestling, I couldn't say, well, I'm going to main event WrestleMania, because a woman had never done it until now. And so I was just like, thanks. So I was just like, well, you know, I'm going to go back to college eventually, and I'm just trying out this thing. And then I got hurt in a match, and I was kind of getting lost. I didn't know what way to go, and I ended up on a flight over to Orlando because I decided I was going to do a personal training course as a plan B. And I think once you start with plan Bs, they become plan As, and you throw everything else out the window. And I was just like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. And I asked my mom if I could come home. She said, nope. She said, you don't know what you're doing. You have to stick to something. So I went over to Orlando. I gave up wrestling. And then I just spent years trying to figure out what I was passionate about. I was like, oh, well, what I loved about wrestling was training. So I did the personal training thing. Then I was like, oh, no, that's not it. I'm not really good at this. And then and I was like, but what I loved was the traveling. So then I became a flight attendant. Wow. And being a flight attendant, it's not really like being a wrestler, contrary to popular belief. And so then I was like, okay, no, well, what I loved about wrestling was performing. So then I went back to college. I did my acting degree. And once I finished, I was looking for acting work, and I was handing in my resume everywhere, my headshots. And I get a call from the Vikings. And they looked at my resume, and I had all this physical experience, lo and behold, because I'd failed PE. And they were like, oh, do you do stunts? And I was like, yeah, that's what I do. I'm a stunt woman. And they were like, okay, would you like to come along and do a week? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then I hang up the phone. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. And so I was like, okay, I was good at wrestling. So if I can go to a wrestling school, get my confidence back, and apply that to stunts, then nobody will be any the wiser. And so I did that. And when I was wrestling, the guy who was teaching the class was like, have you ever gone for a WWE tryout? And I was like, nah, I'm doing my acting thing, doing my stunt thing apparently. And he was like, well, I think you should go for it, because I think you'd get it. And just like that, everything fell into place. It was like all those things that I was searching for, that passion that I was searching for again, I was like, this is what I'm meant to do. And then I came here. Now I'm